My name's Verity. I'm a stand-up comedian and punk poet. I pay £720 a month to live in an abandoned care home.
The average renter pays £15,000 a year to their landlord. And nowhere is the crisis in spiralling housing costs more acute than London.
They're not trying to make it so you're living in squalor, but they're not making it so you can live in dignity.
27-year-old comedian Verity Sharpe says it's a landlord's wet dream, so much so she's been pushed out of it. Now she lives in a decommissioned care home.
Allegedly, it's closed down because the staff were abusing the resident, which is not good. They have buttons on the wall for calling a nurse, but a nurse never comes.
But as a property guardian, she isn't guaranteed the same rights as a renter.
I had a big leak from someone's toilet. There was just a big damp patch, and then this whole wall was wet and water was coming out this light switch.
And with the costs of guardianships catching up to private tenancies, is the rental crisis so absurd it's laughable?
Guardianships are not the solution, they're just a symptom. And they're definitely a symptom of I would say greed. You have 50 rooms in this house, and why are they all so expensive?
To find out, I went to see Verity's stand-up set, part of a comedy night which she hosts in the care home.
We're in a guardianship property. For those who don't know, that's a landlord's wet dream. It's where they get a disused building, like an abandoned school, or a derelict hospital, or a Ladbrokes. And they rent it out to chumps like me for upwards of £700 a month.
This is the kitchen. I share with about 12 to 15 people.
But there's only 5 chairs at your dining table. Is that ever an issue?
Yeah, I think if you have friends around, it's you and your friends can sit here, but then if someone's cooking around you, that's a bit tough. We all get on really well. It's honestly, I think, really surprising how well everyone in this kitchen and on this floor gets on. We're really lucky. The boiler is a massive problem, and it's always been a problem. It's an old building, but they tried to fix it one day, and then we just didn't have hot water, and the whole floor didn't have hot water, so no showers, no hot water in rooms. It was getting on months and months, to the point where it's just why am I paying? If bills are included and I don't even get hot water, why am I paying for them? Or they didn't give us any discount on rent. That's what we were trying to ask for, to be well, if you're not going to fix it, that's fine, we'll live around it, just give us some money off. They kept saying what a difficult fix it would be and how we'd have to turn off all the water, and then it turns out that it was just they had stoppers on some of the pipes so that the old people didn't burn their hands if they had dementia or something and burnt themselves. Although it was annoying, it did radicalise me to yeah.
Did it highlight to you the difference in kind of obligations that a landlord has towards tenants versus the obligations that they have to a property guardian?
Yeah, they definitely have obligations that they have to fulfil in certain timeframes. I don't think it's the same level with guardianships. We weren't completely up shit creek, we could use a different shower or a different kitchen or boiler kettle, but that's not really what you're paying for. And they have to have an HMO licence, which means that you have a sink, a toilet, a kitchen, hot water, heating. Yes, but does it have to work? That's not specified. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're not trying to make it so you're living in squalor, mm-hmm. but they're not making it so you can live in dignity. Last year, yeah, I had a big leak from someone's toilet, so it was just toilet water was coming. I'd been away for 2 weeks, mm-hmm. and then there was just a big damp patch, and then this whole wall was wet, and water was coming out this light switch.
No way.
And they were just I waited, it wasn't too bad, I waited maybe 6 weeks for it to get fixed.
6 weeks.
Yeah, and then I think eventually they knocked 200 quid off my rent, but I was this is not good.
No. So was it actual toilet water that was coming through?
I'm not really sure. The first room I lived in, there was a leak, and it was genuinely toilet water in my bathroom, and then so I had to move into this room, and then that must have been, maybe it was someone's sink or something was leaking, or like someone's cistern. I don't think it was like, it didn't smell weird, it was just like the damp.
It actually turned out that it stopped being a care home because the staff were actually abusing the residents, which means I live with some pretty vengeful ghosts. Please laugh. If you don't, it is sad, it is sad. On top of the ghosts, I've got 54 housemates. So it's a bit like Big Brother, you know, all the fighting and fucking. Except in Big Brother, if you get evicted, you leave with like 10 grand and a lucrative career on the shopping channel. If I get evicted, I'll leave with bed bugs and a deeper understanding of magic mushrooms.
I blame Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Like, she's brilliant, but when she made Crashing, I think it was like, it seemed so trendy and she made it look like so cool and like so bohemian and free. But it's actually for people who can't afford renters' rights and can't afford to like, or don't have the references to get into like a normal tenancy. And it is a bit of like I don't want to say middle class kids cosplaying being poor, but it I think has that feel. That, yeah, I think it's definitely like gentrified squatting, but also you're part of like the gentrification problem, not in that affordable housing isn't to move to an area that you're not from. That I don't count that as gentrification, but it's the fact that you're complicit in holding a space for property developers to then put up luxury flats.
No, it's good. I actually started looking for a girlfriend when my landlord said that they were raising the rent. You know, strategic. I wanted to find someone that I could eventually split the price of a room and a house share with. You know, I wasn't really looking for emotional stability or dependence. I was looking for a dishwasher and an espresso machine. And I think I've really found that in Rosa.
I come from the Lake District, which is like such a beautiful part of the country. I'm so lucky. When I was like 15, we moved into a council house. It was a new build in a row of new builds, and they're like beige on the inside, beige on the outside, like food from Greg's. They put it on a floodplain because that was like affordable and flat, and they just kind of like put them up within 2 years. So our town like floods like biblically like every 5 years, because it's like the wettest place in Europe and they've tarmacked over loads of it. And they'd like, it happened before, so they'd put these flood defences up, but it just kind of like pushed all the water downstream onto the floodplain where they just put up all these council houses and affordable houses. My mum was like stuck in the house for 3 days, like with the dog. It was just like stayed upstairs in the house because the water was like up to your chest and like you don't know what's in the water and it's like sewage water. Yeah, it was really an odd time. I really realised early on that like housing is a commodity, and like when it's treated like that, it's like a chess piece in the game of capitalism, and like if you don't have that, you're number one, you don't have somewhere to live, but like seeing how people use it as capital is like really crazy.
I do think it's going to get worse. I think we're going to like have to move in with our partners quicker to kind of survive the whole cost of living thing and like rents going up. I think that like communal living, like I love it, but it's not the solution to the housing crisis. I think polyamory is. Shout out to polyamory. Yeah, I think like in 10 years, you'll look over the wasteland that is wherever we are in London, and you'll see people fighting over the last vape, and you'll be hiding from gangs of sentient line bikes. And you better hope you've bagged some pussy, because you will be sheltering in the hollowed out carcass of your dead lover. And I know which end I'm starting from.
I think it's so irresponsible to say that it's like the solution to the housing crisis, because we know the solution to the housing crisis. It's rent controls. It's like more legislation for the private rental market. to say it's not a solution to the housing crisis. Guardianships are not the solution. They're just a symptom. And they're definitely a symptom of like, I would say sort of like greed, because why you have like, what, 50 rooms in this house, and why are they all so expensive for, yeah, it's definitely taking people who need a certain way of life or like can't afford a certain standard of living and then making them pay, and like you can increase the rent year on year, and which has happened here. It's increased by like 6% every year. This year it didn't, which was really nice. But yeah, to have to plan for that is crazy.